People are emotional creatures. Don't ever forget this when you are trying to share your story. Today I want to share with you 4 powerful emotions of every great speech. If you want to give a great speech, you have to make people feel things. You can give a lot of good information that can be really helpful, but people remember what you make them feel. And so you want to make sure when you're giving a speech, you are making people feel these certain emotions. I'm Brian Fleming, the founder of Use Your Story, and I've been sharing my story as a paid public speaker for the past 16 years at the time of this recording. And my mission here is to show you how you can also share your story and make a difference and a side income doing so. And real quick, if you haven't done so already, go to useyourstory.com right now and grab your free copy of the Share Your Story Roadmap. I'm going to show you for free exactly how to get booked to speak and make your first $500 speaking. It's not hard. I'm going to show you exactly how to do it, and it's free. There's nothing in this. I'm not selling you anything. Go to useyourstory.com right now to grab that free Share Your Story Roadmap. The reason it's important to be able to make people feel emotions in your speech is because people take action. People do things. They make life decisions based on emotions. Sometimes they're not even good decisions. Good or bad, regardless, people make emotional decisions. It's like the old marketing phrase, facts tell, but emotions sell. I didn't come up with it. I don't know who did, but it's true. We make decisions based on emotions, and you want to get your audience feeling certain emotions because it's going to make your speech more powerful. And by the way, I'm not talking about using emotional tactics to manipulate people. That's not what I'm saying. Don't be one of those, all right? People can tell. I'm talking more about persuasion, not manipulating people to do something you want them to do or to get on your side. You shouldn't have to manipulate. I'm talking more about using emotions to persuade people. And the difference, I think, in my experience at least, is that manipulation gets people to do things that may not be in their best interest, but persuasion actually encourages people through emotion to make decisions or to do things, to take actions that are in their favor and the outcomes are favorable to them. And if you have a message, a story that can help people, you need to be using these emotions to influence people when you speak, so they can get some sort of outcome or result that you can help them get that will help make their lives better, or the lives of people they know better, or the world around us better. The first emotion is making people feel glad. And by the way, I didn't come up with these 3 or 4 emotions in this lesson. This was taught way before I even got into speaking. So this is not my lesson. Again, I don't know who came up with it. You can talk to anyone in the speaking industry who's been around a while. They know this lesson. But I want to put it here for you so that you can benefit from it. And the first emotion is glad. You want to make people feel glad. You want to make them have happy emotions. You want them to feel encouraged. For example, if you're speaking and you're thanking people for their support because people did something, they've done a good thing, or as a group collectively, they did something that made a difference. You want those people to feel glad. You want them to feel happy about what they did. And one way you can do that is by thanking them for what they did. And not just thanking them generically, but pointing out specific things they did that made a difference and the results that came out of that were favorable and desired, and how they had a personal impact on the outcome that happened. That makes people feel really good, like they had a meaningful difference that they helped make somewhere in the world. That's just one example, but there's a lot of different scenarios, but you want to make people feel glad. And next, the second one is you want to make people feel sad. Now, I'm not saying this to be, again, a jerk or manipulative, but you want to, in some way, make people feel sad in your speech. Now, here's the thing. You can tell a sad story. You can have people feeling sad. But what you don't do is leave them there. That's not the end of your speech. Don't do it at the end. You have to bring people back up. You have to leave people on a high note every single time. Here's an example. When I'm sharing my story, talking about how to stand firm when everything around you is blowing up, it's my keynote speech I've been giving for a decade and a half. I have a story about my friend Cody. My friend Cody was my first roommate in the Army, and he was killed in Iraq, killed in action. One of his friends, they were in an ambush, and one of his friends was gunned down but still alive and exposed to enemy fire. And so Cody, who is behind safety, returning fire against the enemy, decided to actually run out into the middle of the kill zone where all the gunfire is going on to grab his buddy and get him back, drag him back to safety. Cody was shot and killed that day in doing so. That's a true story. And it's that almost, this is off topic, but that actually, when I learned of his death, it almost hurt me worse than my own injury in Afghanistan. But regardless, that's off topic. But I tell that story because it ties into the overall point of resilience in the message that I'm telling in my speech. Now, this is a very sad story. This makes people feel sadness, but I'm doing it for a reason, because throughout my speech, I'm going to be bringing them back up. And here in just a minute, I'm going to tell you in another one of the points how I bring that back up and how it resolves. But think about in your speech, how can you make people feel sadness? Again, it sounds messed up, but how can you make them feel sadness? It's just one of those emotions. It's an up and down roller coaster. The best speeches are emotional roller coasters. A lot of them, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them. I don't know maybe any of the greatest speeches I've ever heard that weren't very powerful emotional roller coasters. And so each of these emotions has their place on that roller coaster. So what is a sad point in your story that will make people really just sort of sit back in their seats and, oh, wow, gosh, I can't imagine, is what's going through their head? It can be useful, and it's going to be helpful. And it won't be manipulative or anything like that. You should not be using it for that purpose. Again, the third emotion is making people mad. Yep, making people mad. Now, not angering your audience, telling them they're idiots, unless you're in politics maybe. But you want people to feel negative, angry emotion to an extent. All right, you don't want them burning down the building, but you want them feeling anger a little bit about something that's powerful. And I don't care if you support or don't support this particular politician. By the way, politicians live here because this is what gets people to action. If you don't believe me, turn on the news. Here's an example. Trump. Trump makes people mad, really mad. He makes his political adversaries and their groups extremely mad. But he also makes his supporters mad. What do I mean? He makes his adversaries mad, but he makes his supporters mad. He says things that makes them mad about the things he's promising change with, so they'll get on board and sort of, be on his side and fight for his cause, and he'll lead the charge. He rallies people together by making them angry, and a lot of other things, but there's lots of emotion. But that's just one really perfect example of a person here in modern history who is very good at using language through speeches to make people mad. And like him or not, again, I'm not endorsing or denying anything like that. Like him or not, it works. So take the lesson, whether you like the guy or not, take the lesson that things he does that work for him. Okay, and I could use this for other public figures as well. That was just a very obvious example to use. And politics is one of those places where this is used most, making people mad. And one of the ways you can do this is speaking to things of injustice pertaining to your topic. Are there things of injustice happening to people groups or areas of society that relate to what you're talking about, where people would get angry when they hear about the injustices happening to people? Maybe people like yourself, or groups of people they care about. Or maybe you're talking about a major change that needs to take place in society because something just isn't right and this needs to stop or this needs to change. Think about it. Are people in your people group, maybe people who have similar past experiences to you, are there groups of people who are being hurt by things in the way they are? And you can address that very specifically with stories and examples that will get people a little riled up to want to take action. You make people mad, you will see them take action, and part of your job is to steer that in a productive direction. And the fourth emotion that every powerful speech has is inspiration. Leaving people feeling inspired. Inspiration is a little bit different than happiness, because inspiration is more like an aspirational, hopeful look to the future. Like things aren't great now or they're not perfect now, but they can be. And people start to believe that things can be different and better. It's be a vision caster, someone who casts vision about what's possible that people want, and helping them to believe that that is actually possible for them. Leaving them with hope, for example, that they can overcome their own challenge or battle that they're facing in their own life. When I'm using my story talking about how to stand firm when everything around you is blowing up, resilience, getting through things, talking about my story of being injured by a suicide bomber and fighting a war, recovering from that injury, moving forward in life. I talk about things that relate to people. I talk about what I went through, but I also talk about what I was able to do with it. And a lot of people, most people, I think when they look at someone like yourself or me when we're telling our story, even if they don't know exactly what you're trying to get them to do next, what they do know is that they're looking at somebody and they're saying to themselves very often, if that person can survive all that and get through that, then I think I can get through this. It's a little thought. Some people don't even realize they're thinking it, but it's that little bit of next step hope that they can move forward beyond their thing and get some sort of desired outcome they're trying to get. One way I've used inspiration in my speeches is the story of not just how my friend was killed in a war zone, because I don't use that lightly either, but it's a very powerful part of my speech if you've ever seen my actual keynote speech. But I don't just bring people down with that story. I tell them something redeems that experience, and I save it for the end of the speech. And here's what it is. Probably 5 or 6 years after his death, I was speaking in Indian Wells, Palm Springs, California, at an event, and there was a lady sitting at one of the front tables at this fundraiser, this military fundraiser I was speaking for. And after my speech, she came up to me and she said, "Hi," reached her hand out, "Hi, I'm Cody's mom." I'd never met Cody's mom. I didn't know any of his family, but I had dedicated my book Redeployed, my part of the book, because I co-authored the book with my friend Chad. I dedicated my part of the book to Cody. Well, one of Cody's mom's friends got her hands on the book and said, "Oh my gosh, this guy dedicated this book to your son, Cody." And she showed up at one of my events. And one of the things I remember her saying, we talked for a while in the hallway after the speech. And she said, it was really hard losing Cody, as you can imagine. She said, but one of my greatest fears is that who he was will be forgotten. She said, but at least, through your book and your remembering of him, at least in that way, his memory will outlive both of us, even through the book. And so what happened there was that I was able to inspire the audience by telling that story of, yes, I lost my friend, but then years later, his mother showed up at one of my speaking events in a place I'd never been, and we got to talk. And I found that it gave her hope, and it made her feel a little bit better that somebody else was acknowledging the life her son had lived. See, that's inspiration right there. And that's a true story. I'm not making that up. That's exactly how it happened. So the best things, the best stories are the ones you can't make up. But, and I don't recommend you make up any stories. You don't need to if you've lived any bit of life at all. But the whole thing was with that speech, with the speeches I give, make people happy. It's mad, sad, glad, and inspired. All right, look for those 4 emotions. How can you provoke and bring out those emotions? Like a roller coaster, up and down throughout your speech. And by the way, be funny. You don't have to be funny. If you're not funny, don't try to be funny. But if you are funny, or you have some humorous stories, or some lines you find work, humor is, I don't know if it's technically an emotion, but I would consider it personally an emotion, because humor is very effective at bringing people's guards down if they don't know you or trust you, and making people feel relaxed with you, and being more open to hearing what you have to say. That's just a bonus. I didn't even plan on putting that in here, but if you can put some humor in there somewhere, remember, the emotion is an up and down roller coaster all throughout your speech. The most powerful speeches in the world, very often, most all of them, provoke a wider range of human emotions, because it influences people, and it gets them to take action and do something, which is the purpose of every speech. And again, if you haven't done so already, go grab the Share Your Story roadmap at useyourstory.com, where I'm going to show you a very simple step-by-step process for how to get booked to speak, sharing your story, and make your first $500 speaking. Go grab it if you haven't done so already at useyourstory.com.